Hello, friends. John here with Forward Talk. I want to discuss a Justin Peters and Keith Foskey video just briefly today and show once again how weak the cessationist arguments are. But before we do, I want to point you to my merch shop as I have I think, some fun product. There are hats, there are t-shirts, there's all sorts of things there. I list and show here the two versions of the Beards or Apostolic mugs that I have available. Hashtag Be Like the Apostles, hashtag Bearded Bros. If you are a bearded brother, treat yourself to one of these great coffee mugs. If you're a lady and you have a husband who is a bearded brother, perhaps you want to surprise him with one of these great mugs. Again, the link will be in the bio. There are other logos and brands that we have there that deal with traditions and scripture. So go check those out and consider making a purchase for yourself or for a loved one. Now that we have got that out of the way, let's take a look at the video that we came to discuss and to talk about today. Here is Justin Peters on the Keith Foskey, Your Calvinist podcast. Take a look and a listen at what Justin has to say.
What is the theme of the book of Hebrews? That Jesus is better, right?
That's right. Yeah.
He has a better name. He's a better high priest. He's offered a better sacrifice, instituted a better covenant.
All these are true.
Everything in the New Testament is better, except prophecy.
Oh wow. That's powerful thought. That's right.
Prophecy tanked. Like prophecy fell off a cliff.
Well, so he makes the argument that everything in the New Testament is better except for prophecy. He starts off with comparing the person and work of Jesus in redemption in the cross and his sacrifice and his death on the cross to the Old Testament sacrificial system. And the point is exactly right. Jesus is better in all of those ways, but you can't just in a single sentence make the logical leap from saying that Jesus is a better priest with a better name and better sacrifices than the Old Testament system to throwing in a comment about a completely different topic and saying that everything was better in the New Testament except for prophecy and that prophecy tanked, it fell off of a cliff. Well, let's ask ourselves the question right now, by what standard does does Justin and Keith determine that prophecy tanked, that prophecy fell off of a cliff? We have so many examples of prophecy in the New Testament, and we have concentrated in one family. Philip's family had four daughters in one family that were prophets, that were prophetesses. They prophesied, and all kinds of prophecies. Agabus prophesied in the New Testament. There were predictions of famines and all sorts of things in the New Testament, words of wisdom, words of knowledge. There were people that gave prophecy and a word of knowledge to the Apostle Paul that he was going to die when he got to Rome. There are all kinds of examples of prophecy in the New Testament, not to mention the fact that the very last book of the New Testament is a book of prophecy. The New Testament ends with a book full of prophecy about the future. Now, regardless of how you understand early versus late dating of the book of Revelation, most people agree that the book of Revelation was the last book penned by New Testament authors. Regardless of whether you put it early or late, it is one of, if not the last book written of the New Testament canon. And it ends with a book of prophecy, a book that is nothing but prophecy. So I don't understand the claim on any kind of theological grounds that prophecy tanked and fell off of a cliff in the New Testament. In fact, one of the offices of the New Testament ministry from Ephesians chapter 4 are prophets. And there is not a single verse of scripture in the New Testament that teaches that these gifts or that prophets or prophecy will cease prior to the second coming of Christ. And so this claim, this claim that prophecy tanked and fell off of a cliff in the New Testament is simply not borne out by the data or the evidence, not to mention the logical fallacy of Justin Peters' example that everything's greater in the New Testament. Jesus, his priesthood, his ministry, his sacrifice, his offering, to somehow going from that to everything's better in the New Testament except for prophecy, dealing with two completely different categories in that example. Problem with Justin, as though, and even Keith, is that while they claim to be cessationist and do so based upon their adherence to sola scriptura, most of their arguments are not based upon sola scriptura. And this is a pattern that you are going to see as you look through Justin's content and material on the gifts of the Spirit and on miracles and healing and so forth and so on. Justin does little to no exegetical work in the text of Scripture. All he does is what he accuses Pentecostals of doing, and that's living on experience. He's going to point out how this person failed and how this healing didn't happen and how this prophecy didn't come to pass. He's not exegeting scripture, and he rarely even attempts to exegete scripture when dealing with the issue of cessationism. He's going to point to the failures of humans, and they're also almost always concentrated within an extremely charismatic word of faith kind of demographic of continuationist. And there is a difference between continuationists and charismatics. There is a big difference. Notice how Peters is going to define his first experience in this way.
As a teenager, there was a neighbor of mine who went to our church who was always getting a dream, a vision from God. God always was speaking to him. God seemed to speak to this guy more than he ever did Moses. You know, he's one of those kinds of folks. And he told me about a faith healer named Nora Lamb, who was coming to my hometown, Vicksburg, Mississippi. And
I did learn that about Justin in this video. I've seen it, but I took particular notice of it in this video that he is from Vicksburg, Mississippi, very close to my stomping grounds. Been to and preached in Vicksburg, Mississippi many of times.
holding a crusade, and he said that God had spoken to him and told him that I was going to be healed by Nora Lamb. And at age 16, I really wanted to be healed. I wanted to be able to do the things that my friends were doing, you know, driving and playing football and all that kind of stuff. So I really latched on to that. And I did not only did I not have any discernment at that age, I wasn't even a believer. I mean, I thought I was because I, prayed the quote unquote sinner's prayer, but I wasn't regenerate. So I went to see Nora Lamb, believing that I would be healed. And of course, obviously, I was not. That was my first exposure to what I now know to be the Word of Faith movement.
Notice how he is setting up and building his foundation from a personal experience. And this is what Justin almost always does. And I feel terrible for him. I feel bad for the condition that he is in with cerebral palsy. It's nothing to mock or to scoff at whatsoever. He's in a difficult situation, and I feel bad for his struggle and desire, as he said, to do what all the other kids did and were not able to do that. He seems to emotionally have come to terms with that at this point in his life. But the fact of the matter, as sad as that is, and as much of a reality as that is, Justin not being healed, nor any number of other people not being healed, has no bearing whatsoever on what the Bible teaches about the continuation of the gifts. And there are scores and scores of people that have a different testimony than Justin Peters, and verifiably so, of being healed in supernatural ways. And so pointing to personal experience is not a valid argument against continuationism, or against the gift of healing or miracles, or against any of the gifts of the Spirit. There's always going to be frauds, misuses of the gifts of the Spirit. And there were false prophets in the time period in which Justin admitted, or would admit, the gifts were in full operation. So there were frauds during the time period when all would agree that the gifts were in operation. So pointing to human failures in in a certain demographic of Christianity is not proof. And his argument at the beginning of the in the first video simply does not hold water. There's no grounds for saying that prophecy tanked in the New Testament. No grounds for saying prophecy fell off of the cliff. Everything was better in the Old Test or in the New Testament over the Old Testament except for prophecy. Justin simply made that up, and it's a terribly weak thing to make up, because it just simply does not hold water, and the data does not back it up. Thank you for taking the opportunity to click on Forward Talk today. One more time before we go, please take the opportunity, first of all, to subscribe, click the notification bell, share this video with a friend if you like it. Also, take the opportunity to check out my merch shop with the link in the bio. Once again, it's always a pleasure to speak to and with you guys. Don't forget to comment. Even if you disagree, please leave a comment. Thank you so much and enjoy your day.